We're in interesting times at the moment with recession. What would you say is the core role for HR in such tough times?
It's a really interesting question, isn't it? Because you'd expect to see HR managing the whole inevitability of workforce reduction programs, doing it in a way that's efficient, it's effective. It's also sympathetic because how you manage it has such an impact not only on the people leaving but also on the people that remain, this kind of so-called survivor syndrome. So there's obviously a major role there, but my view is that HR has a much more proactive, value-added role that they can also provide during these times. And one of the challenges that HR has, as we know, is that they're quite often criticised or challenged around the added value that they provide. And I think this actually, ironically, given these times, gives us an opportunity to do it. So what do I mean by that? I think there's a number of areas. First, I think HR, or the HR function, if it understands the business well enough, can proactively go across the whole organisation to identify cost reduction opportunities. I mean, things that we should be, really the experts in, things like spans and layers of control. Understanding where, by doing that form of analysis and going to line management or functional management, challenging them around the level of cost they have in the business. I mean, secondly, which is related to that, I guess, is also ensuring they've got their own house in order. They've looked at their own costs and they've really challenged themselves around, are we genuinely adding value in the work we're doing? Are we genuinely doing it in the most cost-efficient way? So, further exploration of things like outsourcing and shared services, I think, comes in there. I think thirdly, and relating to that last point, is really making sure that the people strategy is fundamentally aligned to the overall business strategy. And if there is an issue around cost control and cost optimization, which can be characterized, I guess, as doing more for less in today's environment, are we really focusing as a people strategy on that activity? And is there stuff that we should perhaps put less priority on? So there's sort of what I call structural issues that you can really address. I think there are also sort of almost a couple of others that I think relate to the conduct of all this. So, for example, how well are we engaging our employees through this whole process? What's the quality of our communications to explain why it is we're doing it? To what extent are we getting them involved in the whole process? I'm really taken by things like large group interventions to get the people affected by all this engaged in the process. Yeah. I know there's turkeys voting for Christmas syndrome here, but my experience is that if people are engaged, they understand it more. And it comes back to this issue about are we being treated fairly as well. And I guess that to me is a crucial one. And the final area is the management of talent during this. I mean, I don't know what you feel, but in your experience of this is, but quality people will get jobs, whatever the state of the economy is, and to what extent is HR leading that process of identifying top talent, managing it in a way that's really going to keep them engaged, and really focusing on ensuring that we don't lose them. And I think there's another element to that is, starting to recognise that you're going to have limited spend on learning and development. Where are you focusing that spend? Yeah. I'm a great believer in the animal farm concept. All roles are equal, but some are more equal than others. Sure. So let's identify the key roles. And they're, by the way, not necessarily, high flyers. They're not necessarily, senior roles. I mean, if you work, the example we tend to give nowadays is, if you're working in a hotel group, probably the most important role the hotel group has is the receptionist. Yeah. So are you focusing your L&D spend where it should be? Yeah. Rambling answer, but that's kind of where I think it's a massive opportunity for HR in my view. Yeah.
When you go into a shell-shocked organisation, is it quite often that you have to suggest that the HR function has to change, partially, radically? Do you think that's a common situation?
Let me answer that in this way. What frustrates me is a lack of knowledge around the businesses they're working in. So trying to encourage them to take that kind of proactive role is highly dependent upon, do they understand the business they're in? Yeah? And there's far too many HR functions that are kind of like it's this whole concept of business partner that really gets me going, actually. A business partner means we're not part of the business, we're partner to the business. Yeah. And really to understand how you can add value in that way, you've got to understand the business. So it might be a shell-shocked HR function, but it's typically because they're not fully integrated into the business. And that way, once you are into that position, you have permission to go there and say, in that function, that marketing function, why have we got 5 layers? Why is our spans of control down to 2.5? Because if you're not part of it, they'll be saying, well, what the hell do you know?
Do you think in times such as this, sometimes there can be some good that comes out of it in so much as companies become much more sort of looking at very much at the business as a whole in more detail and really focus on issues that perhaps have been allowed to go bad? Do you think that's...
Well, if you think back to, one of the few advantages of getting beyond 50 is you've been through one or two of these recessions before. And, you've seen it hit different industries at different times, and they've become very lean, and that whole lean agenda becomes very strong. So I think that makes them more efficient, that makes them more competitive. And it actually makes them think about, how do I manage my key players through this whole process? Yes. How do I manage talent? So, in that sense, some good can come out of it. I think it also does something which I think is it comes back to what I was saying earlier. I think organisations have got to start to see cost reduction programs, and I hate to just focus on the negative, but that's where we are right now, as not one-off projects. You've almost got to create a cost consciousness culture so that people at all levels are genuinely questioning the added value provided by any cost spend. I think there are a number of industries at the moment that are just starting to recognise that what was seen as acceptable spend is no longer that way. Yep. And so you're seeing a lot of questioning around it. My view would be that needs to be part of a culture. Yeah. A long-term culture. Sure.
Every business hopes and believes that it's got a future. Yeah. What is your advice in terms of maintaining morale, keeping up enthusiasm and the focus and the loyalty to the company? What are the core tricks of the trade?
Well, I don't think it's a trick, and I'm sorry to pick you up on that. I think it's about employee engagement. I genuinely believe this is about, are we getting messages out there about why we're having to do this? Are we involving people in more than just email-type correspondence? Are we talking to them? Are we getting feedback? Are we involving them in the whole process of, we're in this together, guys, let's try and do something about it together? I think there's a real, for me, that's a massive issue. Leadership is crucial in that environment. And again, coming back to what HR can do, there's an awful lot of leaders out there, at senior level that have never been through this before. They won't have the capacity and the capability and the skills to do it. Learn from your corporate wisdom, learn from the corporate past, provide the guys with some skills. I think leadership coaching is going to have a massive role at the moment. Yeah. And focusing on the people aspects is even more important than it was before. That's why, make a big point about managing talent at the moment. It's hugely important. Yeah. What you don't want to be doing is coming out the other end with all your key guys gone, cut into the bone, and suddenly we've got a growth period coming up, and we're not set up to do it.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Indeed. Yeah. Is there a risk that HR can become quite isolated in terms of the cost-cutting measures are usually redundancy? First of all, is redundancy always necessary? Is that something that you look at?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because our own business has just announced, you may have seen it in the paper actually over the weekend, a kind of flexible contract arrangement. We're asking our staff to sign up to us, signing up to us to alter terms and conditions of employment, that if we think it's appropriate, we could ask them to work 4-day week or take long periods of leave at a reduced rate of pay. And that, I think, is a proactive approach to say, look, we're okay at the moment, but everything, read the paper on a Sunday, you come to work, want to slit your throat, it's that bad at the moment. We understand there's a big recession coming, or it's here now and it's happening. Let's be proactive about this. Let's try and minimise minimise the requirement to lay off redundancies. You know, if an organisation is facing a cliff, take some of the building industries, you're going to have to do it. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. But in our industry, for example, let's think about a proactive set of options that can minimise that. And I think our flexible working approach is a good example of it. And actually, you know, becomes a company that's voted one of the best employers of the year because you're trying to be proactive. And that's an HR initiative, which the whole organisation is taking on board. You know, other things, you know, to what extent can you, reduce the cost of services to your clients in a way that's going to maintain the core skills in the organisation so that when you go through to the next phase. For me, it's about being proactive, thinking about different things, and there's an example of where we've gone with our organisation.
Have you had quite a bit of experience in where companies have merged and acquired, and you know, sort of a number of companies have gone under one umbrella? I mean, what are the difficulties there in terms of having sort of parity and having a culture that everybody can sort of work towards?
That's it's a very different challenge, isn't it? I mean, one of the things, we work a lot with organisations that are going through those mergers, and they kind of talk about a third way, don't they? Sort of, we're not going to do it like culture A or culture B. We're going to kind of create culture C. My view on that is, what's the right culture to deliver your strategy? Yes. And if that's culture A, go with culture A. If it's culture B, go with culture B. But really drive it from the strategic requirements of the organisation. I mean, there's such a lot to get done in the early days of any merger. You know, most people just, have I got a job? What is that job? What's our operating model going to be? All of that needs to be driven by a strategic vision and an understanding of the strategic objectives and what understanding of your marketplace, understanding of your product cycles, etc. And all of that will drive a set of behaviours that are going to be required to deliver. And I have a little bit of I take a kind of a bit of a jaundiced view when people say it's about merging two cultures together and we'll have the best of both. Well, that might not be appropriate. It might be one or the other. And the reality is most mergers it's an acquisition on one part of it. Anyway.
And what effect in your experience is the situation? What are the trends in terms of globalised business and the move to internationalise your business? What's happening?
What I'm seeing a lot of is a move towards global standardised processes, standardisation of operating models, both from a line perspective and from a functional perspective. I'm talking about the big global players here, obviously. I'm seeing, and they're struggling to get that in because of all sorts of issues around the processes themselves, around systems to make that happen. But that's the trend that's going on right now, an attempt to try and standardise, attempt to try and get... And that's done for good reasons. I mean, if you look at the oil companies, they're doing it to make sure that they don't have issues like Shell did when they couldn't work out where their oil reserves were. So that's the trend going on. It's not easy. That's a really tough move.
If you were to write a simple message on the side of a bus to aim at HR directors on their drudging way to work on their commute, what would that simple message be in terms of what KPMG can do when you partner with organisations?
I had one answer there. Then you put this supplementary on there. The first answer would be understand your business. Be integrated into your business. Be part of the business, not be a partner to the business. From a KPMG perspective, I think if we'd say to HR people, what we've been able to do with a lot of organisations is work with them to align their people strategy to the business strategy, to create an operating model that is obviously going to deliver that people strategy. And the key thing about the approach we take is we can actually see a line of sight from every activity in HR, whether it be an HR initiative to the organisation or an enabling activity for HR to enable it to do that, and the metrics that come out the bottom end, a complete line of sight from those metrics to how that delivers to the strategic objectives of the organisation, which, is what the HR function has to do. It has to be able to demonstrate that what it's doing is adding value into the organisation. But to do that, you've got to understand your business, which is why I'd say that.
Very good. How have you found the HR Summit? Has it been useful for you?
It's been very useful for us, and I'll tell you why, for a lot of reasons. We've met some really interesting people, seen some very, very good presentations. people don't associate KPMG with this stuff. We're accountants, aren't we? Well, no, we're not. And this is an area where we're doing a lot of work in people and change. And so just to raise our profile and get a lot of people thinking, oh yeah, well you are in this area, it's been massively beneficial for us.
That's excellent. Mark Spears, thank you very much.
Thank you.